Alright guys, we're going to go over the dev Q&A and the last two Darkest Hour podcasts. I'm going to try to speed run through these as best as I can to give my perspective as a filthy barb player, plus kind of like, I don't know if I want to say dunk on other people, but I feel like a lot of the people on the Darkest Hour podcast are the same people giving the same opinions over and over and over and over and over. And on top of that, none of the people that are on the Darkest Hour podcast, I think, ever really play Barb, except for the advent of like Skinny Pete. And as we know, Skinny Pete's in-game interactions, while he's an extremely good player, are far from the normal interactions that you would normally experience if you're like the average player, and or also even someone that isn't as recognizable as Skinny Pete off rip when you see him in the dungeon. So we'll kind of go quick. I'll try to keep it brief, but we'll start with the Q&A first. Do you guys have anything planned to reduce the effectiveness of prevalence of bows? Yeah, they talk about nerfing bows, but they believe that Barb is OP, which is like really, really cracked. And then talking about healing, I'm assuming they're referring to Skinny Pete's like quote-unquote hippo build, which is just magic healing and PDR, which has been in the game forever. I don't think that Potion Chugger is really causing the problem. I think the problem in general is scaling of potions in general. Warlocks heal with really crates with potions, so do clerics because they're building magic healing. I think magic healing probably needs to be removed from potions maybe, and it should only scale with maybe buff duration. I don't know exactly, but I feel like that's really silly. Obviously rangers like S tier class, same with fighter and cleric. And Bard, but they didn't talk about nerfing Bard here, which is insane. That class has been the top of the game forever. Same with Fighter. They didn't talk about that here specifically, but I expect those classes to get nerfed, and or at least the build to get nerfed. I think Demon's Glee just needs to be removed from the game. I don't think you should be giving any non-full-on magic weapon magic damage. You should never be able to do hybrid builds. It's too broken. Most of the classes don't build enough magic res anyway. Even with Iron Will on a Barb, you still get melted by magic damage because all the damage is true, which is really stupid, and it should not be stacking. Like, if you get one magic damage on Demon's Glee, it should just be one magic damage. I would, in fact, be for a buff to Demon's Glee if they removed the ability to scale extra magic damage with the weapon. So let's say they give it 3 or 4 magic damage. That's fine with me, especially if it's add magic and not true magic. But then they just remove the ability to scale that magic damage. Very silly. New skills and perks. SDF says it's his job. Again, really silly. I don't know why this guy can't delegate a single task to someone else and then just test it. And then if he doesn't like it, then tell him to go back to the chalkboard and do something else. But it's good to know that he's at least thinking about it, because 90% of the, like, I would argue 50% of the perks in the game are completely useless. So either they need to combine perks together that are underutilized to see if people will take it. For instance, if you were to combine a moral boost with, like, on Barb, because I'm a Barb main, moral boost and the Carnage perk, maybe someone would pick it. I don't think anyone would pick it, but you know, stuff like that. It would also get people off using the same old perks, except for classes like Barb. I think the Barb class would be the only class that I don't think it matters how much you buff the other perks. It is quintessential for you to be taking 3 perks on Barb every single time you play the game. If you don't take Iron Will, you're literally trolling. If you don't take Robust, you're really trolling, because you can't get enough HP otherwise, because the HP gear in this game is so slow that only fast base move speed classes can take it. And Crush is also basically a quintessential perk, especially in solos and duos, maybe less so in trios. But then if you're playing trios and you don't have Crush, the only thing that really blows is the fact that A, you now no longer can beat bucklers with your Warmaul, and also you can't break guard with a Bardiche if someone's using a heater shield. So it's like really bad. Plus it's really good for running. And you'd have to have like some other really fast class like a ranger or a bard on your team to open doors, or someone that can break doors otherwise, like a wizard, potentially a warlock with hellfire, but they're just much slower. So I don't think this is going to solve anything. I hope it does, but I don't think it's going to, unfortunately. New training system. Yeah, they're talking about that. I don't know that they need this in the game. Subclassing is kind of cool, but only if it's only like a minor situation, similar to like Star Wars Online or Star Wars The Old Republic, whatever the heck it was called, where like you kind of have like two distinct subclasses. One's like a damage and one's like a tank or whatever. You get more damage or you get more survivability. I think that's about the only depth in which they should approach this, because it just feels like you're just turning into Path of Exile, and like the game's gonna get way too complicated, and you already have a really hard time retaining new players. This is kind of interesting. They're talking about new content and like bows again, but they're talking about end game goals, which is kind of cool. But I think the end game goal is just to kill people. I don't know why you're playing this game if you're not just here for the PvP, right? Obviously, killing a boss here and there is cool, but it takes too long because 3-tier maps do not work. They're talking about it now, but it will never work, and it can never work unless you make a continuous dungeon loop like the cycle. And the cycle died because of cheating. It didn't really die because the game was bad. It died because of cheating. So hopefully they can address that. But like, if every single time you play Ruins, which is the only 3-tier map right now, everyone dies on the top level and gets out, or everyone dies on the top level, then you're spending crypts doing nothing unless you get an unadvantageous fight or someone hides so you can fight them on crypts. And then by the time you're in Inferno, nobody's there. 2-tier maps would ensure that more people are fighting in Inferno, but I don't like the Inferno map just as like a matter of fact. And it's kind of not fun for PvP because the tile sucks, so they'd either have to rework that or limit the amount of teams that can go down. So let's say you have a map, 20 teams are on the map, just as like 20 players, sorry. Let's say there's like whatever, in duos there's like 10 teams, let's say. Let's say 6 teams make it from the top level down to Inferno. I think that there should be separated queues so that you're only fighting one other team in Inferno at any given time. Because no one's going to be able to kill the boss or even really loot or move on Inferno if there's like 4 teams down there. It just gets way too hectic and you can't even do it. There's going to be teams camping the boss, trying to third party your boss, and it's not fun for people. So this continuous floor matchmaking system they're talking about seems cool, but it had to be done perfectly in order for it to be effective. I think the best way to do it would be just to do 2 tiers on every map, make 5 maps. I don't even necessarily think that you should be able to see what map you're queuing for. I think you should just have to press the Q button on your mode. There should be no, and it should just be a random, whatever you get is what you get at the time. I know it's kind of cringe because you might get a map that you dislike, but I think this like kind of curbs the split player base that everyone's complaining about. Something else that I think would be really interesting on this topic here is if somehow they were able to implement a system where you're literally never in a main menu mode. So like in between floors, the time is extended to like, let's say 7 minutes, 8 minutes. And instead of going into like the expressman room, you're in an entire tavern where you go back to like the Ruins old tavern and you have to interact with the merchants there, and you can interact with your whole stash and everything in there. So you can do, you never really feel like you're totally out in a main menu game, but you never feel like you're not playing the game. And then if you want to opt out of going in because you're going to get off the game, you can opt out. But let's say, for instance, if we bring up Trusty Paint, so I don't blind everybody. Let's say, for instance, this is the room in which is the mid-level transition area, right? You'd have your merchants here. So we'll just say merch. So we just have like people, the expressman, the goblin merchant, the fucking potion guy, the surge guy, whatever. You have them all in one room like this, all around. Your stash is here or whatever. And you can freely walk around here with a bunch of other players, right? And then this zone here is I'm ready for the next level zone. And there'll be like a timer on your screen. Let's say 7 minutes. You can walk around and interact with every merchant. You can re-bandage, re-med, get all your consumables, whatever, re-franny up, whatever you want to do. Put your stuff in the stash, manage your stash. I mean, if you stand in this room, you're going into the next queue. This square, you're going into the next queue. If not, you're just waiting in the middle, and then you go to the queue square to get in the queue. And that way, this also allows you, let's say there's training dummies here. You can test your training dummy stuff. You can see who's going to go into the next queue. So it's like, oh, look, there's a fighter going in the queue, and there's a wizard, and there's a warlock. This is what I'm going to be fighting before I get in the match. I think this would be the ultimate end game solution to what they're offering. I don't know how you would get this to work or implement it. But personally, I think sitting in the main menu is probably the most boring part of the game. Like organizing the stash for 5 hours, sorting out your inventories, buying stuff, all that kind of stuff is kind of annoying. On top of that, another thing that I wish would be in the game, which they haven't yet talked about, I've never seen anyone talk about it, is like, I think, because this is like your, if you go here, this is like your 10 slots or whatever to sell. If you have 9 characters with 10 slots available to them, why do I have to switch characters to manage all the slots? All the slots should be added to a total pool of slots, and you should just be able to manage it from one character. Same with if you go to the market and you want to buy green potions, you buy your 1 stack. Oh, and it's out of stock. There should be 10 or 9 stocks of green potions here for all the characters that you can buy the green potions on. I don't think I should have to swap to other characters to get all my 9 frannies. It should just be 9 purchasing options for the 30 minutes on all the consumables. The weapons and gear, okay, you can leave it per character. Or like the jack-o'-lantern, okay, you can leave it per character. But like everything else should be total amount of available purchases for your account in one single merchant, which would also feed into the previous idea I was just talking about. So the randomization of the tiles is a really good idea. People have been asking this for a long time, but it's also, I'm a little bit 50-50 on it, because while this is cool for like, you don't know what you're going to get, it also kind of ruins the ability to like preemptively plan for certain classes. So let's say I see a wizard early in the dungeon, right? I know that on the Goblin Caves tile, let's say I'm playing the Goblin Caves tile, right? I know for a fact that if I go to a specific tile, I can abuse the map to my advantage. If it's all random tiles, it kind of becomes a little shitty when you know only certain classes will die in certain situations. So like for instance, if you know about the secret hiding spot up here on Spider Cave and you're playing Barb, if you're having a really hard time killing a wizard and he's really fast and cutting you, you can go hide up here and get the jump on him and give yourself an advantage. If this tile isn't in this corner every single time, kind of feels a little shitty, but I would probably be in for random tiles overall because I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. And it could also make some of the lesser utilized tiles more usable. Like nobody in the game plays in these 2 tiles ever. Nobody's here. These 2 tiles are completely dead. This tile is a quick pass-through tile. Nobody plays in these 2 tiles either. They're basically dead tiles. So it would get some of the tiles utilized more. But those, and like same with like this room, nobody's staying in here or playing in here ever. You're getting spawn rushed and that's it. So it would be nice for that. Premium account bullshit. It kind of sucks because they nerfed the free-to-play accounts, but I mean, buy the game, bro. Regional pricing, they talked about it, but just buy the game. Yeah, they're talking about this. There definitely needs to be more craftable weapons. Like every single person should have a weapon craft at like silver for like every weapon, and for like even the epic things like Grimslayer or Trolls Club, Bane, or whatever the fuck. Like there needs to be way more weapon craft. I don't know why this isn't like a thing. It should take like 2 minutes to like come up with a little thing. If something comes broken, like Demon's Glee or something like that, you can just nerf it. It's whatever. The socketing system is interesting, but like I feel like we're just returning to like Diablo 2. Like if you want to play socketing, go play Diablo 2. They talk about this in the recent podcast quite a bit. We'll go over it more later. But yeah, like this just seems like crazy. I like that he's thinking about like the new players, and that he doesn't want people to have to invest in BIS and having a lot of time making BIS. But the problem is you're just creating like a exponential, like hard game. And when I say hard, I mean hard to find, because now instead of finding the piece of gear that you want that has the good rolls, now you got to find a piece of gear that has the good base rolls, and then you got to find the gems, and it just becomes like a time sink. Fishing, who cares about this? I don't know. Some people like random PV things, like we're playing RuneScape and making like 30 campfires in a row. Whatever. I played RuneScape for like 5 minutes when I was a kid. I logged in. I made my character. Hotshot 808. I logged in. And I have a choice between playing RuneScape and Diablo. I log into RuneScape, and there's some guy building fires in a line for 4 hours. Like, why would I want to play that game? Why do I want to play a game where I gotta go fish? versus like I'm playing Diablo where I'm getting in the action and I'm killing people and killing monsters and it's cool. I don't know. It seems kind of silly. Like, we should just stop thinking about stuff like this. Yep. They understand ruins is broken. Okay, cool. Because none of the problems that were addressed for revision, like none of the problems were addressed. Even some simple tweaks, like if you go on the map here, like even some simple tweaks on ruins that would take them 5 minutes is like on this tile here. Let's say you spawn in this tile here. Okay, you can kill 2 mobs here, the harpy and the wolf that spawns. Go this way. Maybe you deal with the little armor if you want to. Hop the wall, come up here, avoid all the mobs, hop this wall, avoid all the mobs, and you can be in the other tile here before the enemy team can even function if they don't literally spawn here, go in the back top graveyard, so they're avoiding and only killing 2 mobs, or coming down by killing 1 mob and avoiding getting out into stables. So many tiles on this map, you can just avoid all the mobs, and it makes no sense. If you spawn in Slime Forest, GG. If you spawn in Forest Path, GG. If you spawn in Well, GG. Like, you're already spending half the first 2, like, the half of the starting of the round, so, like, the first, like, half of 5 minutes, killing mobs, and someone's already in your tile if they choose to be. This hop-up spot, remove it from the game. So many hop-up spots need to be removed. This spot, just remove it from the game. Like, you can jump over every single wall here. Get that shit out of the game. They talk about that in the podcast, so we'll kind of go over more about what they were saying later. Sorcerer just is going to be completely busted. I don't know why they're even considering making a class like this. If it actually functions the way Sorcerer functions in Dungeons & Dragons, where they can cast with their hands, it's already going to be the most broken class. If they continue on down the journey, where they're combining different spells, the class is going to be so unbelievably broken, it doesn't make any sense. What people don't understand about this game is a lot of the game comes down to like a MOBA mechanic, where you're at a glance identifying the enemy that you're fighting. If I look across the tile and I see a ranger and I see that he's got a longbow and a spear, I can assume 2 things. He's either A, playing backstep and multi-shot, or he's playing backstep and shotgun. If I see a fighter from across the room, I know he's playing sprint and second wind, but I want to see what items he has. Does he have a sword? Does he crystal sword? Does he have a demon's glee? It will determine how I play. If you spot a sorceress from across the map, across the tile, and he's got, let's say, upward of 50 spell combinations, you have no idea what you're fighting, and you can just straight up lose a fight depending on how much damage that class will do, because you didn't know that instead of having fucking fireball with like volcano on the ground, he's got ice ball with fucking frost nova when you get close to him. It just, the at a glance features of any given game is super important, especially when you're talking about games with different gear or games with like different items. That's why in Dota and League of Legends and stuff like that, it's very important that they maintain the class identity in terms of looks, because when you catch a character on the periphery of your vision, you need to know if you're fighting Legion Commander or you're fighting Skywrath Mage. If they look the fucking same, you don't know what hero it was when you caught a glimpse of him, and you can just straight up die because you got dueled or something like that, right? Like, it's not like, you can see it even in the YouTube videos of some creators, right? Some of the creators on YouTube are making videos where they disguise themselves as certain other classes, and you could kill people just by having like that slight advantage of you don't know what the fuck you're fighting. And I think that's a big problem with the game, is class identity needs to be more cemented in the game. So hopefully they don't go too crazy with that, but yeah. The arena stash, nice, cool, should be in the game. It should be like a specific tab that you get for free that just holds your arena gear. It shouldn't be big, or maybe even just like it's not a full stash, but it's like you have a separate like armor rack where you can just equip your arena kit and leave it there, so you don't have to worry about, oh fuck, did I sell my arena kit? Did I lose my arena piece? Where's my arena piece? Just like a small little stash for arena items only, and only items that can go in there are found by or crafted by you, so that way it can't be abused for extra stash space. I think that's a good idea. Enchant weapons or equipment, again, I don't like this. Silly. Like, the only thing that makes sense here is maybe on like high end as a gold sink. If you're worried about gold sinks, I don't think people really are. Maybe you can like modify one roll on your weapon or item. So let's say you find a weapon or item and it's like one, like one roll short of Biss, okay, like I get it. So, you know, maybe you can re-roll that one roll and you get like so many chances, or it exponentially increases the price. But like I'd be okay for that. But overall, it seems kind of like just why? Like there's already so much gear in the game. There's already so much good gear. Who cares? Bosses being reworked. This is mainly a Spectral Knight, Goblin Caves kind of issue. I don't think it matters that much. Like if you get ganked by like, doing the cave troll, you should have killed the guys before you went to the cave troll, I guess. I would be in favor of more time on the maps. And for cave troll and all dual bosses specifically, I would be in favor of there being like a secret ladder or portal or thing, kind of like the Wyvern boss, where after you kill both bosses in the middle, there's like a secret way to get out or to get you back to the top level so you don't get camped as much. I would be in favor of that. But I don't think they need to rework the bosses at all because you're getting third party on bosses. That's just a part of the game. So yeah. Yeah, their contents. They're talking about content. Who cares? Like, this is a kind of irrelevant. Like, they're always going to be working on the game. Like, they give a PR answer of, like, we only have a certain amount of people and blah, blah, blah. But, like, they're always working on the game. Like, this is just silly. Yeah, the content is quote-unquote been lacking, but you only feel that way because the game has been stale because they refuse to immediately hotfix things that are inherently busted. Like, Ranger Backstep is clearly too good. Fighter Demon's Glee is clearly too good. Cleric Heals are clearly too good. So, like, if they just tweak, like, things that are actually broken quick and hotfix things that are blatantly too good quick, I mean, the problems like this and the complaints about content kind of go out the window, honestly. Yeah, this is kind of like, whatever. They're just talking about, like, are you satisfied with the player count? The player count dwindled because the hype for the game died after they got into the lawsuit and had to be removed from Steam. That really fucked them. Like, they shouldn't have even released on Steam at all unless they were sure they were going to be on there forever, because all the outside variety streamers who were really into the game, like Summit and XQC and a few of people, their attention will just drift because no one wants to be waiting or downloading extra stuff to play the game, right? So, yeah. Soon TM on new content, cool, whatever. As long as it's not 3-tier maps, we don't care. As long as the monsters aren't cancer, cool. Like, I feel like another reason why no one plays the ice map is because the punishment for getting hit by a mob in a video game should be, I got hit by the mob and I lost health. Not, I got hit by the mob, I lost health, and I also lost my action speed and HP, right? Can we please have custom arena maps? Yeah, we don't care about that. Like, the arena maps would be cool, but as long as they're balanced, that's all that matters. They just need to make like a PvP only map, like a Halo 3 type deal. The leaderboard would be cool. Points is cool. Skins, cosmetics is cool, but it's not necessarily needed. It's like, okay. Like, I feel like arena is fine in its current state, but it would be cool to, like, see a global leaderboard just so you can see how you stack up versus other people or people that you aspire to be like. Stuff like that would be kind of cool. They already talked about this, like, randomized rooms. It's okay. Quivers, I think Quivers are crazy silly, in my opinion. Like, unless they tone down range damage as a whole, I think Quivers are just stupid because now you're just giving... It feels like the tax for you playing ranged damage should be that you have to have less inventory space. And I feel like if you add Quivers to the game without giving other people a default backpack that doesn't cost another slot, like let's say Quiver doesn't cost a slot, you just get it. It's just like a thing in the game. Unless it's like an item that you place in your inventory and you just fill it with arrows, I feel like other classes that don't abuse ranged, Barb, Cleric, although they have campfires, just kind of get the short end of the stick in terms of that. I feel like the arrows on classes, it's like a tax for you playing range damage, which is like, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence of that. I don't know about this. Like, I feel like you don't need to be able to cancel potions, so you should just have to commit. I don't even know if you should be able to cancel bandages. Maybe surges, but like maybe even remove canceling of bandages. I don't know. It feels weird. But I think the only reason why you aren't allowed to cancel potions, other than whatever he says, is like, I feel like potions, because they're active on you once you do it, that's why it's not cancelable. Whereas bandages aren't active while after you do it. It's like you do it and then you just get the immediate heal. Yeah, that's just cringe. I don't know. Crackheads. Housing, I don't really care about this. I think my solution of having the game continuous on like a map solves this problem. I don't think you need fucking houses and stuff like that. Like, it's just like we're getting into Warcraft. Like, are we playing Warcraft or are we playing Dark and Darker? This is like whatever. I don't think you want to switch the gear gap because that's why people play the game. But I also understand that like new players have a wildly different experience to everyone else, and they often get stomped by gear gap. I mean, I don't know. It's a 50-50. Like some classes don't even function without having gear, right? Like it's really hard to play certain classes without having gear. So they'd have to rework a lot of the classes for this to be like a thing. But yeah, they're really getting into like some crazy issues if they start bringing in gems. So, Sorcerer having its own spells is cool. But again, the 50 spell thing is going to be like pretty crazy. Like it's going to be pretty crazy. Okay. Like I just think it might be too much. Yeah, that's just like the Q&A. Now we can talk about Darkest Hour. We'll do the most recent podcast and then maybe I'll go back for the other one. But let's just do this one because this is what I think is most important. So, Euthyphro makes a comment in the early that like barbs are one-shotting people. That's just like inherently not true. Unless you have dog shit gear on your like sub 100 HP and the guy's running like some crazy strength build, and in that case he's really slow. Like you're not getting one shot by a barbarian, dude, unless you have like a shadow mask on him, and it's just not happening. Promos agrees that Ranger Backstep is kind of overpowered, but he's calling for Ranger bust, but he's just memeing. I think Ranger's probably too strong. They all agree that Cleric is too broken. These people play a lot of trios, so that makes sense. Cleric is probably way too strong, and the bugs surrounding Cleric with like divine protection, ignoring armor penetration, is probably a little bit ridiculous. Needs to be toned down. But we have some specific moments we can go to where they talk about things that are important. So,
Ranger can be at 102 move speed and still deal with those just by backstepping to the nearest door.
He's referring to backstep and dealing with melee classes, specifically the barbarian. Ranger's been given a lot of freedom now because of backstep, because you don't have to build as much move speed, which means you can focus on more damage and more HP, which makes it way harder to kill them. Backstep is inherently a broken ability. I don't mind that it has charges. I think they should actually even have 3 charges. You should not be able to backstep and attack at the same time. That is what makes backstep super broken. If they want it to be a movement disengage ability, they should leave it as a movement disengage ability. If it's going to function in the current state that it's functioning, it needs to be 1 charge and the cooldown needs to be like 15 seconds. The fact that you get 2 charges and you can use it between 7 seconds and you can attack is what makes it broken. It's the attacking with the spear while backstepping that makes it busted, because you're guaranteed almost always to land 3 spears on somebody before they can hit you, even if they have a weapon like the Zweihander or a halberd. And Ranger inherently has really fast swap weapon speed, and they have inherent attack speed. So you almost are always, even if you clip a Ranger and then get in melee range, are taking 1, if not 2 spears before you can actually get in, and that kills most classes. If I take 1 or 2 damage from a ranged attack while in trying to engage a ranger on barb, I immediately have to disengage, because if I get in range, I'm guaranteed to take 1 or 2 spear hits, and it's guaranteed that I have to hit him 2 to 3 times to kill him, depending on the weapon I'm using. So it's like really, really, really gimmicky and really bad. Arguably worse than like Warlock Phantomize or any other movement speed ability like Rage and Sprint, but at least those abilities, Warlock doesn't get to attack, he just gets to heal if he's already previously landed a curse. And Fighter and Barb, while they get to attack, they're not attacking while getting a movement speed disjoint, they're just increasing their total move speed. So it's a little bit crazy, but yeah, it's kind of wild.
Get me in there, man. I just want to get in there and try it.
Right.
Running around with no spellbook sounds fun. Barehand casting sounds like it'd be better at base than Warlock, because Warlock is kind of trash at base unless you just abuse mobs. But yeah, I don't know. Just get me in there. I don't have any expectations.
Okay. Yeah, you said, I mean, and this is something that SDF said, is the Sorcerer will have more spells than the Wizard. And part of the class design is you have a spell that you can cast in your right hand and your left hand, and he said that he wants you to be able to combine them, right?
Like I said before, this is going to create so much fucking chaos. I didn't even mention before the fact that sorcerers, if they are able to cast with no move speed penalty hands out, because they don't have to have the 10 minus move speed book, it is going to be so unbelievably broken, you don't even know what kiting is in comparison to what's going to happen. Caveat, they could make the sorcerer really slow at base, but because it's a caster, I very much doubt that it will be super slow. So it just seems like it's going to be super overpowered, and then we get into the whole, like, at a glance, like, what the fuck am I playing? What am I fighting against? So, yeah, it just seems like a little bit crazy.
That's what it feels like. It feels like you're logging into Dark and Darker to do your chores.
Well, now it's not as bad, right, as it was last season, because now all you have to do is just go down, kill the boss, and you get a decent amount of AP. So it's definitely gotten a bit better.
Feels like it's just more of a drag, though, compared to last season.
Yeah.
To actually get demigod.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, to the arena topic, though, I also have had a blast in arena, and I've been having a really good time with it, and it's incentivized me to do things in other parts of the game that I didn't give a shit about in previous seasons. I didn't care about leveling my vendors up. I never did my quests. I didn't craft. I didn't do any of that stuff. I think the beauty of arena to me is, I mean, the PvP itself is fun, but to me, it's how it ties well into the other systems of the game. It gives me a reason to do the quests. It gives me a reason to want to craft gear. It gives me something to spend money on throughout the course of the season that isn't just buying more gold coin bags. After, like, I get 5 of those, I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care about getting more gold storage. That's not interesting to me. I'd much rather get cool shit and amass more cool shit. And arena kit is a really cool thing that you work on over the course of the wipe.
That is a really good point that Etherfro makes. The only reason why Arena is actually good for the game is because it incentivizes you to actually find and craft better gear, so you're not just buying stuff off the market. That's a really good point. They go on to talk about how they want the AP grinder rewards to be tied to Arena as well, so you could do either or. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea, because I think that means they have to do less work on the back end and make less skins, but I would be cool if there was like 2 separate things you could get for Arena and for AP, and there's 2 sets of rewards. If you want both, you have to do both. And if you want, you can select which set of rewards you want for Arena and select what set of rewards you want for AP grinding. I don't think that they should, if they're going to add more, I feel like they should add another set of rewards rather than just making it one set of rewards. You can get it from Arena or you can get it from AP grinding. I think that's kind of cringe. At 30 minutes, Euthyphro talks about how he hates searching for the Ghost King for 30 minutes. Very cringe. Like I said, this gets solved if you remove the 3-layer system. It should be a 2-layer system. And you should either be able to pick what boss you want by pressing a lever or a button, or it should tell you what boss it is before you go down. I don't like the RNG of tell you what boss it is before you go down. I think you should just go down there. You should go into the boss room. You should pick your altar. You can summon whatever boss you like to farm, and that's that. Will that increase the amount of like good loot that's in the game? Yes. Like uniques and stuff like that, like named weapons, specifically turbo farming. Does it really matter? No, because they're still going to be absurdly priced, so it doesn't really matter that much. I don't think it's going to affect the game that much if they do that. I think you should be able to fight whatever boss you want every time you go down in the Inferno, and it should be a 2-layer map only. So that's just like, should be just part of the game. 34 minutes.
If it doesn't come with like a badge of honor, kind of, I'm not interested.
They go about achievements.
Totally if I get something for my efforts, something I can display or look at or point to, it does feel like an achievement, because you can show your cute little prize that you got for it, right? Just some empty text that sits in an achievement log, it's not going to do it for me. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Definitely could.
Again, cool point. They're talking about adding achievements into the game, but everyone is in unanimous agreement that like if there's achievements in the game, it has to be tied to some sort of reward, an item, a skin, a player, border, a title, something that you can show off. Otherwise, what's the point if it's just a text log in a random like page? Like nobody cares about that, right? So promos makes a suggestion. I'm not sure where it is. I think it's a little further ahead, about the same thing that we talked about on stream. To curb spawn rushing, you should have to clear a certain amount of mobs on a tile to leave. Then they talked about like druids abusing blah 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 whatever. I think personally, in order for you to leave your spawn tile, you should have to like it should only be for the first 2 minutes of the game, and it should only be for like the spawn tile that you spawn in. I don't know how they would implement this, but you should have to clear the entire tile or most of the tile on the tile that you spawn on in order to leave the tile. Just to give people a slight breather room for spawn rushing. I feel like that would fix the game a little bit. You know, you have to clear at least one tile, then all the tiles open up after a certain period of time, so you don't get immediately spawn rushed. How they implement that, I don't know. How they go about it, I don't know. Maybe you have to kill a certain amount of mobs and you get like a stone or a key, and then the key unlocks your tile, and then you can play the game normally. Maybe certain classes suffer because if you can't clear the mobs fast enough, or you spawn on a tile that has more mob density than the previous tile, then you're kind of screwed. Maybe they do a percent base, so you have to kill 20% of the tile. I don't know, but it would help with spawn rushing if they made it so the first tile only that you spawn in, you have to clear some of it to leave. The other thing is like that Jay makes a good point is like what happens when your spawn tile gets cleared and someone's AFK in their spawn tile? Can they just sit AFK in there and then you can't go in? That's the only problem with that, is like if you sit AFK, are you protected the whole game if you just sit in your spawn tile because nobody can get in or out? I don't know how they would curb that. Maybe you just can't leave but you can go in. I'm not sure. That is something to take into consideration when you're talking about locking spawn tiles or locking tiles based on mob kills. Feels a little bit strange. 50 minutes, they go over the gems like we talked about. And Jay makes a good point that the socket system kind of makes it devolve into like just crazy amounts of like RNG, and you go into like PoE. And Promos makes a good suggestion that if you're going to go that far to add sockets, you might as well just buff the loot for the low end player so everyone can just get loot instead of having to find gems. And then I think Youthfro makes the strongest point here, which is like you're searching for one item with 3 good rolls on it in the current system. Now when you get gems in the system, now we're searching for the good base item, then 4 perfect gems that you're looking for to fit the gear. And now instead of making 1 decision, you're up to 5 decisions per item. And now multiply that per slot. Now you're at like 30 decisions to make a perfect kit rather than 8 decisions to make a good kit, if that makes sense. So a little bit crazy, kind of too much. At 117,
They give people a reason to play the game.
they talk about mid-wipe and end-wipe events. Cool idea. As long as they're separate from the game, I get it. I don't know about this whole like 6-man boss raids or stuff like that. It would be kind of cool if there was more of like a story. Maybe like you're thinking like Overwatch is what they were kind of like hinting at, like a PvE like experience. I don't know about that. That seems a little bit crazy. But I do think that they should do things like maybe for like a weekend, you bring back multi-classic for like a weekend only, because nobody really likes it, but some people do. Or let's say on a weekend only, they bring back the OG Thunderdome Goblin Caves 3x3. Like, I think those kind of things would be cool, but I don't think it should be more than like a separate queue that should be on like a weekend only basis, and that's that. It just seems like a little bit crazy to be considering PvE stories. They don't have enough people for that. At 124, they go over the new player
Solos
experience, and they are going to do a new player experience.
You know what's the most fun in the game is duos.
Yeah, duos
Duos is the
You
most
should
fun.
just delete a whole game mode.
It has to be
If
done.
you had enough social things like guilds and like
Exactly.
helping out each other.
Vincent and Promos are delusional here, and they think that solos and duos is the least played mode when it's actually the most played mode. Like, crazy that they would even suggest like deleting duos or solos just because they add guilds to the game where you could like socialize. That's just crazy. Like, trios is by far the worst, objectively worst mode, in my opinion. It's just so hectic and not even about, like, did you land your good skill? It's about who's got a cleric and who got their heal off better and who had better gear, usually, versus, like, you made a sick outplay because it's a concentrated 1v1 or a concentrated 2v2 situation. I think trios is very wild in comparison to what happens in, like, a solo or duos game. A lot of the trios comes down to, like, did you hit a heal? Or did you use your spell at the right time? Or did someone else like hit you with a direct fireball? And it's less about like, could you avoid it? And more about like, did you get sandwiched on some shitty part of the map? I feel like. Now that's just me personally. I know a lot of people love trios. I really dislike trios. So take my opinion with like a caveat here. But these two people believe that solos and duos is an unpopular mode and no one's playing it. Promo suggests there's only 4 players. 4% of the player base in solos, which is a straight up fucking lie. I don't know where he reached into his anal cavity for like that number, but like bro reached for that number. Solos is by far the most popular game mode, and I think duos is actually more popular than trios as well, so I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Caveat, that could be because not a lot of people are integrated into the game properly, and not a lot of people have like a social aspect other than the Discord to like find people to play, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that like literally at all. And at 133 they're talking about
That's so sad.
the Goblin Merchant
Funny.
recovery.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really good for Timmy's. I think it's kind of cringe though, because sometimes we'll be like looting bodies, one of us is dead, and we're like, oh, we'll just leave his kit because he'll get it back in 5 minutes when we leave. It's just not the same for sure. Really good for new players, but maybe it just shouldn't be in high roller. Thoughts?
Be fine with that.
Or you could pay to enter. I think I would rather. I guess you're technically doing the same.
I don't believe that the Goblin Merchant needs to be fucked with. I think it's fine that you get some of your kit back. Like, I think it's cool. It saves you time on having to re-gear up, especially if you're a player that doesn't have a lot of time to play the game. Keep in mind, every single thing that these people say about the game is through the lens of someone that plays the game for a living and full time and plays it a lot and is at a high skill level. Every single thing that these people say on this podcast is never through the lens of the average player and never through the lens, even if you're above average player in skill, of a player that actually doesn't have 30, 40 hours a week to play this fucking game. So when they say things like, yeah, we want the Goblin Merchant removed because we don't want people to be able to get the gear back, it just sounds like one of these things where it's like, I want the privilege of you having less gear in game because I have time to farm multiple sets and you don't. Feels really shitty. Really shitty to say something like that for like the people that have like real jobs that have to work 40 hours a week. And then at 155, they bring up the spell surge thing that was in the previous podcast, which I was going to make a video on, but I didn't have time. I kind of chalked that. It's my fault. Spell surge kits are cool, but at least Geography acknowledges that like if you're going to worry about spell surge kits and stuff like that to recover all your spells, Cleric would have to be looked at. Conveniently, he leaves out the word Wizard. The reason why Cleric and Wizard have to sit down and have spell charges and stuff like that isn't because Iron Mace wants you to curb or because they want to do the RP of like the real Dungeons & Dragons game, although that does come in a little bit. It's because the spells are too fucking good. The Wizard spells do so much fucking damage. They have so much utility. Cleric heals are so fucking broken. So yes, you have to fucking sit down because having fucking 18 fireballs every 2 seconds because you connected another fireball, so you got some of your fireball back, or you instantly surge to have another 6 fireballs, is fucking cringe. The reason why those classes have to sit down is because their spells are too fucking good. If they add a spell surge to the game, or something along those lines, they need to tone down the damage and heals of those spells, because it's insane. I would be in favor, however, of something Skinny Pete said in the previous session, where they add some sort of spell shrine to the game where you can recover all your spells, or if you interact with a unused resurrection shrine, you can get your spells back. But spell surge would be so strong in this game, especially because it allows you to move, allows you to be mobile. So like now you can run away and start searching and run while a mob is on you and get all your spells back, which would be insane for players like Wizard. Whereas like me, as like a person that has no spells and I'm playing Barb, or like let's say a fighter, now that I baited all the Wizard spells and I tried to go in for a fight, well, you've surged up and you got all your spells back before I could actually close the gap because I had to retreat and heal, and you surged. But the time that I had to heal my HP to close the gap on you, after I wasted all your spells, now I don't have the opportunity to engage on you because it took me longer to, as soon as I surge, or I campfire to get my second win back if I'm a fighter, now you've surged and you got all your spells back instead of getting a little bit of your spells back off a campfire or meditation. You see what I'm saying here? It just feels like that would increase the Wizard power level by like so much. Same with Cleric. By so much, it would be unbelievable. Now in a fight, let's say you took a big fight and you have to get your spells back on Cleric in a trios game. If your two teammates can hold the door for you long enough till you get a surge, like a spell surge kit off, well now the enemy team lost their advantage of pushing you after baiting out your heals and spells. It's like, what? It feels like they'd have to tone down all the spellcasters that utilize campfires, and that, I don't know that they're going to look to do. So, if they add that, it might be way too overpowered. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. That's basically my thoughts. I know I talk fast. I know I went over things fast. I'm going to do more breakdowns and try to be a little slower so the average person can, like, understand what I'm saying. And I'll try to break down the Darker Side podcast forever until they finally let me on. I feel like I'm one of the few players like Euthyphro that actually like is willing to admit when their class is busted or when certain things are completely broken. And I feel like a lot of the other people that are on all the time just deflect and say like, no, my class is not broken, bro. My class is not broken, bro. And they also fail to like acknowledge the different play modes. Like, I get that they're balancing this game for trios, but really there's way less people in trios than there is in solos and duos, and they need to shift away from balancing from trios, I think, to make the game less cancer. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, whatever. I'm a Barb main, so nobody cares about my opinion anyway. Peace.